Mr. Grant Hightower.
I chose to be a protector and champion of young people because I am too familiar with the trauma that comes from having your innocence ripped from you. Forgive me if your first mental pictures of my life include sexual or physical abuse. That's not my history, although I am familiar with that kind of trauma through my work. My trauma was surviving the breakdown of my innocence, hope, self-love, and at times my will. This trauma was not unlike many of yours. It was slow, it was constant, it was by design. Maybe in a different speech at a different time, I'll detail how it felt to be called a stupid fucking nigger in class. Maybe at that time, I'll go into what happened the day my white female elementary teacher pulled me aside and said, I shouldn't talk to the white girls in class for fear of their father's wrath. Maybe later we can go into what brought me to this career, this path. But tonight, we're going to talk about why. Looking out into this audience, I'm looking at exactly why I do what I do. In a lot of ways, I think I'm chasing myself, trying to be the influence in others' lives that I did not have in mind. The position I find myself in is where I fight my life's hardest battle. My passion happens to be what I do for a living. Those who identify as people of color call it representation. Some white folks call it threatening, while others call it inspiring. My mother calls it God's work. I call it necessary. My arena is education. My weapons are my experience, my vision, my mind. My mission is to challenge and refine. Those challenges are presented differently for everyone I come into contact with. For some, I target and challenge their assumptions, beliefs, and norms. In others, I challenge their doubts, perceived shortcomings, and self-hate. For self-proclaimed bigots and racists, I challenge them to prove their hate. Just as I push so-called allies to articulate their allegiance with their chosen cause. I take no prisoners when I enter a space because my students and their potential is too important to take shortcuts on. To over or underestimate their ability, I tend to make a lot of strong alliances because I'm consistently available. My students and coworkers can count on me being there. Because of that, you wouldn't believe how
guilt students try to give me for missing just one day of work. For example, my wife and I have been blessed with 4 babies, so from time to time I need to be away from school. I've had a student email me the day after my wife gave birth, and I'll paraphrase here saying, I'm really happy you had a kid, but you need to come back tomorrow. We want to be in your room, and feel free, really I'm happy for you, but come back. We ain't eating lunch in the calf. Students having that connection is important to me because I was a student who needed that in the worst way. In 3rd grade, I was ready to kill myself, end my life. I was so destroyed by my day-to-day, I believed wholeheartedly that it would be better to end it all rather than go one more day as a young black kid in an all-white school. At 9 years old, I believed I'd be better off, or the world would. No disrespect to my parents, they did everything right. They loved and cared. They provided a home, not just a house. In many respects, I could not have become who I am, and in turn could not have helped and supported the people I have without their love first. Nah, Mom and Pop were on point. It was once I left the support of home when I really needed help. The hours I spent inside the walls of my school, under attack from adults, not necessarily my peers, that was stronger than my parents' best intentions. I went to my resource teacher and I told her I wanted to kill myself. I don't recall the method I wanted to use, but I do remember looking her in the face with resolve and reiterating my intent to no longer live. When she became trivial, smug even, about my sincerity, I punched the window in her office out of rage. It was clear in that moment that even in expressing my deepest pain, the people in this space did not care, even if that meant that they were the difference between my living or dying. I was unable to tolerate that level of inhumanity. And as I think back on this time in my life, I realized that that was a pivotal moment. I knew what she did was wrong. I knew that the way I and the handful of other black and brown students were being treated and overlooked was wrong, but I also realized I was going to have to be the one to change that. I understood that I had the choice to be powerless or shine beyond measure, regardless of what anyone thought of me or did to me. Sometimes You're the revolution you've been waiting for. My choice was to go down a painful road that included countless days of ridicule, judgment, punitive recourse from adults in isolation. I began reading books on the Black Psyche, Soul on Ice, The Fire Next Time, and If They Come in the Morning by Angela Davis. I forced myself to wade through aisles of books in the basement of the library my mother worked in and stared at photos of lynchings for hours. I studied racist propaganda and with the dawn of the internet age, sought out racist websites. I did all of this to get an edge, to know my tormentor better than they would ever know me. In a way, I wanted to get the perspective of my ancestors who were never able to speak their words to me about the pain that kept them silent, that stifled their excellence, and ultimately led to their demise. I learned in those tough years that the only constant was self-confidence. And I think that's where I arrived at my who. I've been trying to be the person I needed when I was that little boy, or that tenacious teenager, or that angry young man. I've been chasing myself, trying to be there for him, and in turn, for you really. The shoulder to help ease the load, the place to laugh when you want to cry, the kick in the ass when you just want to quit, the spark to ignite what we all carry inside of us, this excellence. This is what we're here to celebrate tonight. The quality of being outstanding or extremely good, an outstanding feature or quality. What we've seen so far tonight and what we will continue to witness on this stage is that fire within burning fiercely. The natural gifts that our ancestors have passed down, that we've learned to use to express our deepest emotions, are on display. We're all here gathered around each other with like minds. We feel safe. We feel like this place is ours even if it's just for the moment. We feel free. You'll often hear from athletes or performers that when they step on stage or on the court or field, they change. They get in the zone and they feel free. Their excellence is pouring out of them and they are ready to fulfill their purpose. As Black and brown folk, we become comfortable with using those spaces to tap into and display our excellence. But I'm here to speak to the notion that with every new day in which you wake, the world can be your stage. In fact, it must. By definition, you are excellent. Your skin makes you so. Wherever you go in the world, you stand out and draw attention to yourself just by your very existence. Our society uses the same energy to attack our culture as they do to sing every lyric, hit every new dance, wear every new style, praise every new superhero athlete, just so they can say they're a part of the culture. And even with all the adoration for our culture, even with this generational fact of flattery through emulation, many of us are still just trying to survive. On an individual basis, it is so hard to feel whole sometimes. Even worse, we may even ask ourselves if our efforts matter or are noticed. Every time we're judged, chided, put down, or left unacknowledged, our efforts glossed over, our patience taken advantage of, our names slandered, our bodies violated, our light begins to smolder. We begin to feel insignificant. And this is where my why comes in. That little boy who wanted to kill himself felt powerless, voiceless, insignificant, but through discovery and understanding the path of my ancestors and the people who learned to not only survive, but resist the forces that were employed to break them, he found a voice. He discovered it is in our nature to rise, that he came from excellence, that our brilliance is inherent, it is with us at birth. But our excellence is also something we must fight for. It's important that we take the space we've earned here and make our voices heard. It is the singular most important thing you can do. Raise your voice and force people to feel you, to hear you, to understand you. Whatever it is you're articulating, use this space you have to get it out and into the world. So my why? I want my students to be free. I want them to be able to walk into white spaces and sing their songs and talk their shit and laugh. I want them to sit down in a classroom with any adult and let that adult know how their life experience matters and intersects with what they're learning. I want my students to know their time is valuable. I work with them to not only let them know they are excellent, but to show them it's okay to be so. That the things that people have said and done to them do not have to live inside them. That the passion within, that pull they feel to speak up, that magnetism to pursue what people doubt they can do, that is just the beginning of the rest of their lives. That need to bring out of my students is and has always been stronger than my fear or anxiety of how white people in white spaces feel about me. That kind of fear, a fear of rejection, of not belonging, I guess that fear is really my why. Maybe not the fear, but the millions of lost opportunities, the lost excellence that has come in its wake. Too many of our brothers shot, shamed, or locked away, unable to show their brilliance. Too many of our sisters ground into the earth, worn down by the weakness of men, forced to live as shells of themselves instead of becoming the great minds, mavens, and matriarchs of our nation. There is too much that we lose when we don't show our brilliance, when we choose to keep the hoodie up and our voices locked away, when we allow ignorance, regardless of its benevolence, or hate, regardless of its malevolence, to control our passion, our effort, our ability to love. We allow it to rob us of our gifts. So finally, we arrive at the how. It's good to talk about all of this, but how do we accomplish the task of unearthing our inherent excellence? In all honesty, it's up to you. But to be fair, the how is what the organizers wanted me to speak on, so I'll break down some of what I do that allows me to move through white spaces and support people of color, but also teach white folks how to be better for us and themselves. There is no combination of things that works for all of us. How you arrive at your who, what, and why is going to inform your how. So always remember that the secret is in the struggle. My method is to meet students and people where they are and give them agency to be themselves. I try to extend grace to everyone. I can never know where someone has been, where they are currently, or where they believe they can go. It's important to allow them the opportunity to establish who they want me to see them as before I can know who they really are. One way that I achieve this is by operating with the idea that my door is always open. If you disrespect me, we're gonna have to talk about it, but my door is still open to you. You cussed in class, my door is open. Ashamed of the text you sent your boyfriend, now the school is dragging you on Snap, sit down, we're gonna talk through it. You started a class discussion on the use of the word nigger and you only have one student of color in your class, damn, I thought you knew better, but let's talk it out. For example, one of the students I talked to the most is a black Republican Trump supporter who chose to go to the University of Alabama. I love this kid and his ideals and mine are in direct conflict, but my door is still open. I give him clarity on the things he encounters in his space, and he shares a perspective that exists in our diaspora, but is seldom acknowledged, which gives me more tools to communicate and connect with. Extending grace to others allows you to be someone very rare in this world. You become safe. You allow people to be themselves when they've become used to spending so much of their time protecting themselves. The greatest people I've known in my life reserve their judgment of people and extend their wisdom to people. Once someone sees that I'm available, they can access me, I just listen. I don't simply hear their words and begin my response while quietly sitting, waiting for a break in their thought process. I just let them go. It could be pure nonsense and I still let them talk. I don't correct their pronunciations or autofill their words or try to get to the point for them. I have conversations where I listen to topics ranging from white educators' fears of being labeled racist to a 10th grade girl's analysis on who's more trifling, Chris Sales, his mom, or his grandma. I still don't know the answer to that. I have no interest or knowledge of that situation, but the student felt validated and more importantly, she felt like somebody heard her. A person should always leave saying to themselves, maybe the topic didn't matter, but my voice did. Someone cared to give me the time and patience to say what was on my heart. That's a powerful, powerful thing. As an aside, do yourself a favor and learn to just listen in your romantic relationships. We don't always have to have the solution. Sometimes your significant other really just wants to unpack something, and who better to walk them through that than you? One of the most important things in this process of extending grace and listening is removing your pride from any and all interactions. This is perhaps one of the hardest things to do because we live in a space where we are constantly trying to prove others wrong in order to validate ourselves. This game we play with our pride often creates a stalemate or a jam in communicating. We can't get past that someone doesn't see our perspective as the better or best option. Equally as damaging is we blind ourselves to some obvious solutions because our pride tells us that we are the ones with the best thought, idea, or perspective. However, when you allow humility to be the vehicle, especially in times of conflict, your focus becomes on what is right, not who is right. Ultimately, that's your goal, to find the best option for the situation at hand. There are times when I'm teaching and a student brings up a point or question and I cannot answer, rebut, or redirect it because I don't have the knowledge in the moment to support that student's position. So many teachers will either dismiss, lie to, or engage a student in an argument because they're embarrassed they don't know how to handle that scenario. In my case, I usually reply, damn, you know what? It's a good question, and I'm not confident that I'm always gonna be able to know what to say to you. But tomorrow I got you. And the class continues. I'm no less of an educator, and the student is no worse off at the moment, and as long as I follow up the next day, the class can trust that I'm acting in their best interest. Most of my interpersonal work as an administrator is conflict resolution. Student versus teacher, teacher versus teacher, teacher versus admin, parent versus teacher. There's a difference between confidence in your ability and ego. Before I take on a situation, I'm confident I can handle most scenarios that might take place. But I'm not married to my initial assessment of the scenario either. My process is simple. What's best for the student, the family, the educator, the institution. I cannot keep that in sync without understanding my what, why, and how. So before I leave, I know y'all tired, I'll share one last thought. In all honesty, I look at my own children, and I know that part of my why is them also. The realization sets in that at some point I must give them to the world. And one of my greatest and most desperate hopes is that I can influence you to be at your most excellent when they cross your path. They will need your guidance, courage, and love, just as my students have used mine, and I have used those who fought to get me the message that I am worth everything. Every bit of pain, every bit of love, every bit of loss and triumph. We press on because we cannot be broken. So thank you for waking up tomorrow and being just a little bit flyer. Walking with your head up just a little higher. Go to class next week and talk your shit. Let the RA know you're not loud, you're alive. Begin to forgive and accept the things that have crippled you, heal, and come back with such ferocity that those who follow you feel safe, and those that dare come against you can never succeed because they are not willing to fight for what you are. Everything. Love thyself. Do good work. Know your worth. I'll see y'all out there. And before I go, let the ancestors speak one more time. No.